Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Boy, are you in for a treat today. I have brought a friend of mine who some of you might know, and some of you, when you do know, you're going to be like, who the hell? Who is this dude? You mean to tell me he lives in Tampa Bay? So his name is Tony Michaelides. And that is the first time I've said that without doing a London accent. So I'm very proud of myself for resisting the temptation. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sharon. And not only that, you pronounce my name right, which is perfecto.
Thank you. Well, I actually think it's a big deal that people pronounce names right.
Well, Tony's not that easy to say to a lot of people, you know.
And in New York, we say, yo, Tony. So I've come to like Tony even more through the years because he married a New Yorker.
A Queens girl. Astoria, actually.
Astoria, Queens. What? So typically I only want to talk to people on the show that I really like or they're from New York. So because of Mary, you're here today.
Okay. You'll be thrilled.
So, all right, just to give some context to the audience, I have known Tony for, I think it's 6 years now, right?
Yeah.
We should actually just tell everybody how we met. And I like to hear your version because my version makes me look better and your version probably make me look bad. So go for it.
I've probably done it anyway. Well, we met at Nova 535. There was a breast awareness function and we were doing our bit, you know, putting our hands in our pockets, putting money for a good cause and turning up. I think you were with 2, maybe 3 girls. And the loner that I am, I was there on my own. So anyway, I walked past your table and you're chit-chatting with your lady friends and you just come out and thrust this phone in front of me and said, would you take our picture? And I just said no and kept on walking. And then I kind of studiously looked behind me after a little bit and you were stood there like with your mouth wide open going. So it was kind of a good introduction and then you swept me away into a Starbucks the next day and we spoke forever.
So it really was, anybody that says no to me, I'm so intrigued by. And then I thought it was like a joke. So now
I gotta go now.
Bye. I'm surprised when I said, do you want to be on the show? You didn't just say no. That would have been appropriate.
Oh, I never thought.
Yeah, now you know. Too late.
I should have changed it to, why would I want to be on your show?
Exactly. Yeah, so you have a show now, so I want to be on your show.
Oh, you can be on mine. You have to reach the record, though, and it has to go platinum.
I have to release a record?
Yeah, you can do.
What if I just sing?
Oh, that was good. I've seen you sing.
Okay,
I was your A&R man for a night, Sharon, when we went to that function, that charity do, and you got up on stage, and it was pretty darn good, girl. I was impressed.
Yeah. Do you remember what song I sang? Me either.
You did a duet with a black guy, I think, was it?
Yeah, it was
I don't think it was...
2 black men.
Yeah, they weren't MCs. They were the guests.
Jesse Campbell.
Right.
Jesse Campbell, who was one of the final contestants on The Voice.
Wow.
Yes. And then his other friend, whose name was Jesse, who was an amazing singer, but I was a little more obsessed with Jesse Campbell. He's an incredible artist. I'll have to call Jesse next to be on the show.
There you go.
At least Jesse can sing. You can't, that's for sure.
Who, me?
No, I have to ask Mary.
No, I can't sing. I can sing, but I don't think it'd be termed entertainment.
All right, well, let's not keep torturing the audience.
Don't blame me.
Everybody a little bit about who Tony is. And by the way, when I asked him to, so this is how it went, and this is how I found out who Tony was, because it was, to me, it was a guy at an event, a charity event, right? And we were talking and having fun. And of course, you were going to talk to us because I was with like 2 beautiful estheticians, I think. That's who I was with, actually, at the time. One of my clients' groups. So we, I remember what I said. I said, oh, what's Whitney Houston that's playing? So one of her songs came on at the event. And you were like, I'm going to resist again to do your accent, which I can't believe I'm doing. I've grown so much, Tony. As a human, and I've actually been made fun of so much by my family that I just stopped doing it. You said Whitney Houston, you know, she's not the nicest person. I know, and we're saying it now. Of course, who doesn't love Whitney Houston? And she died, and she was amazing, but she wasn't that nice in the business. And that's what. So I'm like, how the hell do you know? And then you said,
I could have said we dated.
Well, you could have.
You wouldn't have known. Well, no, I don't like to speak ill of the dead. I mean, she's an incredibly talented artist, but I just, for want of a better word, diva, and they exist. She was, she had a team of people round her that would do anything when she snapped her fingers. But seeing it firsthand, taking advantage of a person, embarrassing. I won't recite it because it's not the right thing to do. But I mean,
Listen, it's real. We're having a real talk here.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know now that because of all of the mental health issues that she was suffering from with addiction and such, there certainly was a reason why she wasn't being the nicest person. It doesn't mean that she wasn't a great human being. It's just that she had her own demons, right? I relate to that.
Yeah, I don't know how long she had them. I mean, she was very lucky in as much as she was protected by Clive Davis, the big head honcho of the record company, and he basically made her into like the superstar that she was. But she was incredibly talented. I mean, the voice that you hear on "I Want to Dance with Somebody" and stuff like that. And she kind of literally got in bed with a train wreck, and it didn't help. He was kind of like
that show was so fantastic. The reality show she did. It was a train wreck, and that's why you watched it.
Yeah, well, then people like train wrecks, yeah. But yeah, I think it was tragic because it's the old cliche, taken too soon. But
well, I want to read what Wikipedia says about you.
I thought you meant about her.
No, we're going back to you. So Tony Michaelides is known for working as a promotions executive in the music industry, handling radio and TV promotions for over 30 years. Tony was responsible for arranging the first televised performance outside of Ireland by U2. Ooh! His clients have included, this is where like, even I get embarrassed saying it because it's so super cool. U2, these are your clients, Tony. So I'm just going to repeat that. The Police, Peter Gabriel, David Bowie. Isn't that the guy behind you? And you're, yeah, that's him. For all you people listening to the podcast, just watch the show on Facebook. You'll see a nice picture, well, two pictures of David Bowie. You had the Stone Roses, Bob Marley, Depeche Mode, Massive Attack, New Order, Bryan Adams, Dave Matthews, the Carpenters? I didn't know that you work with the Carpenters. Oh, wow. Matchbox 20, Pixie, Take That, and many more. All right, so I'm annoyed that it doesn't say Lisa Stansfield because you know how I feel about her.
Yeah, you can't put them all in though. Because
around the world tonight, yeah, I can't find my baby. Okay, I'm sorry.
Very good.
Thank you. That's the only song I remember of hers, but damn, it was good. So that was a lot, Tony. There's a lot of people you worked with. Yeah,
I mean, it was great. It was. I started. It's funny actually because I started selling records in the early 70s, but then in the late 70s, I ended up working for my all-time favourite record label. I'd been buying all their records in the 60s, and now I was getting them for free and getting paid. So that was like a dream. But the first artist I worked with in my promotion was Bob Marley and Robert Palmer, Grace Jones, Steve Winwood. And they were all records by artists that I didn't need to do any homework with. And then we all got made redundant, and then luckily I got a job like half an hour later for more money with Charisma, with Genesis and Peter Gabriel. So that was a great experience because they were major artists on the road. And then I went back to Ireland and persuaded them that I could do 5 people's job for one person's wages because I was kind of homesick. I still love the label, and because they're all about the artists. And yeah, 30 years, and then I came here in 2004 to kind of reinvent myself. I was fortunate because I got like an alien of extraordinary ability for services to the music and arts, so I didn't have to do what a lot of the Brits were doing at the time, which was buying pool homes that they could never have dreamt of buying in England and going into debt and then not understanding about homeowners associations and repairs and management. And then all of a sudden the real estate market dipped and they kind of ended up in negative equity and screwed for life. But anyway, that's
let's go back to David Bowie. Okay, so that sounds a lot better than
yeah, okay.
For a moment. All right, so so here's Tony's book. Okay, it's called The Insights Collection, Insights from the Engine Room. That's a guitar in is this brandy or
yeah.
Okay, so you autographed this for me I'm going to tell you right now. It was August
Was
20.
it just saying no, Tony?
Actually, no. And it says, this actually sounds like, yeah, well, we just met. So this is August 2014. And you wrote, enjoy all the very best, Tony. I mean, boring, but I'm kidding. It was, and then I read your book immediately because I was so excited to hear about all of these artists that I have loved for so long. And, one of the reasons that I've told you about already, because, Tony and I it is 9:54 a.m. This show will air at 5:30 p.m. But we got on this call together at 8:15 this morning. Dear Jesus, I'm exhausted talking to you already.
That's your idea.
So what I did was I called Tony because I've always known that music has been such a healing place for me. And starting the show, the whole point was to bring together all of the healers that I knew. And what was great about meeting Tony was that, we both have this love for music. And the talks were really great. And for me to be able to hear some of the inside stories of what went on, especially with U2, because my brother and sister-in-law are such big fans of U2. And to listen to all those stories and see the pictures from when you were just babies, what a life. And I know David Bowie is your true, love, I feel, next to Mary. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about some of the artists and what the experience was like working with these legends after selling records out of your trunk of your car?
Yeah, that was a legit job, though. It was for a record company, and I was selling folk and jazz. But, music has always been... it's no secret that I'm, going to be 67 on Sunday. So I grew up in an amazing time where kind of music changed my life. And it sounds ungrateful, it's not meant to be, but getting a job in the music business was kind of a bonus. Because all I ever did, and it wasn't that I wasn't ambitious, but I wanted a job to buy records and go to gigs, because that was my passion. On the subject of David Bowie, I'll just mention a quick... you talk about music bringing people together, but I was at college, and I was at college with a 70% female and 30% guys. And there was this rather attractive lady there that I asked out called Marie, and I asked her out on a Saturday night, and I just bought Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie. I was 18, and I went to pick her up the Saturday, and in those days their mum used to sling you in the front room while she was upstairs getting ready. So being the nerd that I was, I rifled through the record collection, and lo and behold, I pulled out Hunky Dory, the album before the one I just bought. So the girl I'm taking out for the first time has got the album before the one I just bought. So naturally I married her and had 2 kids with her. I mean, what else would you do? So music brought us 2 incredible children, you could say. No, there's music, and there's a Socrates phrase that I put on my Facebook page a while ago, but I can't quite find. It's about music soothing the soul and stuff. But there's another, it's not my quote, but it's something that, always is a fond affection. It's like, when you write that song when you write that song that means that much to that many, you change their world. Which kind of sums it all up in a really beautiful sentence, because music is a release for a lot of people. I mean, people have been literally come out of comas by people having the foresight to play something that was an incredibly meaningful song to that particular person, and it brought them around more than any medicine or doctors. I shouldn't be saying this to you, though. Doctors are far better than songs.
Not necessarily. Well, it's so true. As you were saying that, I was thinking about my uncles who have all been wonderful singers, and my mom right now, she's lost 7 brothers. We're Irish, so there's a lot of brothers. She's 12 brothers. And all of my uncles, I can remember towards the end, even when dementia has taken over, or they were in the assisted living, if you have them sing Danny Boy, they'll remember all the words, and that passion, and you can see them light up, even if it was for that brief moment through song. It was just such a healing always for my entire family. And I know that you have felt the same. I remember you going on Bay News 9 when it was the anniversary, I think, of David Bowie, or was it? What was it? Was it?
No, it was when he died. It was 2016, so 4 years ago.
Wow, it was 4 years ago. Yeah, so you worked, and he was like your muse, right? I mean, wasn't he?
Well, the thing, Sharon, is I mean, growing up in the time, I mean, three of my biggest heroes, if you like, are Neil Young, Bob Dylan, and Van Morrison. But I don't know that I'd like to meet any of them because Van Morrison sings like an angel, but he's been a grumpy old man since he was like 16. So, it would kind of, dilute the kind of place you have for somebody like that. But I always find that a lot of the time the best artists, the biggest artists are the easiest to work with because they know about relationships and people and stuff. And we talk about David Bowie, and just to quote two names that everybody knows, David Bowie and Bruce Springsteen, both suffered from mental illness. I mean, David Bowie's had a history of mental illness in his family. I mean, what he managed to do was escape from all that. It got his brother, his stepbrother, he committed suicide. And I didn't even know this, but you look at Bruce Springsteen, even from, his daughter being, a horse rider who might be in the next Olympics and things, it's married to the girl of his dreams who even goes out on tour with, so his old lady's with him all the time, And you think the guy who's kind of got everything and means so much to so many suffered from depression. Pretty much all his life. But I think for those people, music was a vehicle for them to overcome it, because there are people that go out on a stage and that's their release. I was just talking to an old friend, Peter Hook, who was in Joy Division and New Order, and their singer in 1980, the day before their first American tour, hung himself. And he suffered from epilepsy and things. But I was asking Peter at the time on my podcast about, do you have fond memories, or is it all really sad? He said, I used to get on stage, and he said, if I was ever, pissed off for any reason or whatever, I just looked at Ian, and that was just enough. It just turned the night round for me. And there was a guy that was struggling that was helping a guy that wasn't struggling. He just might have had an odd moment and things. And it's incredibly moving. And I do feel that so much, whether it's a love song or it's a lyric here or a particular riff that you never forget, a Led Zeppelin riff or something, that people take it away and they have it with them forever. And I do think that music brings you back to a time and a place, and invariably with a person. And I don't care what you're into, if you're into sport, hockey, football, baseball, whatever. I don't think a goal or a pitch or anything does that in the same way that music does. And it sounds a little cliched, it touches the soul, but it really does. I mean, it does. Certain lyrics, when they come out, I mean, people like Dylan, I mean, they'll be remembered forever because... And even the awareness, when you think of it now, I mean, without getting political, but I mean, it's kids marching against guns. It was singers. But I mean, Bob Dylan didn't stop the Vietnam War, but he made kids aware. So people think and relate to things differently when it comes from a household name, if you like. And I think they're great role models.
Let me interject for just a second here, Tony. I think it's so important what you're talking about. When I thought about talking about music being healing, but you were thinking too about all of the people that are suffering right now through, my God, at first it was COVID-19 and now it's racial rioting. And I, just as you were talking, was thinking about all of the beautiful music that will be created through this time because it's history. So, I mean, when I hear the song Imagine today, I can literally go back in time and think about the day that John Lennon was murdered. And I can listen to that song and go right back with my mom buying the album immediately from TSS, a store in New York, and just listening to the song over and over. And those lyrics today ring so true. And the song, just to put some peace into the world, right? Because everybody we're having like this global grief right now. And I think that talking about some of these artists too that have suffered greatly from depression, like I've never known about Bruce Springsteen suffering from depression.
I didn't.
How did
Mary told me, and then it's in his book.
Oh, so Mary is such a huge fan. of
Oh,
Bruce.
she's obsessed. I'm only married to her because he wasn't available. So
It is so great to watch her fandom, though. It really, really is. And wasn't there?
she has a latest edition as of from Amazon yesterday is a Bruce Springsteen face mask.
Oh, that's the best. And I love that he turned his life about growing up and kind of his neighborhood and his community into that Broadway show. I mean, just.
But he's a man of the people. He doesn't have to do anything. We all know he doesn't have to work again. But I mean, even now with his radio show, I mean, it's not just. There's a big article in him in Vanity Fair or something, or Esquire actually, and it says what a great DJ is, because you're in that position where you've got the audience there, and it's not just about the music that he plays; it's the things that he says. And there's a lot of coming together as a community, musicians, with what they're doing with stuff like Zoom now. I mean, one thing that particularly moved me was the thing that the BBC did, and they used it was Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and the songs was the line in the song was the song "Times Like This." It's times like this that we need to learn to love again. And it's so poignant. I'm stood in front of a poster here, a massive Dylan poster from the 60s that says, "The times they are a-changing." I mean, everything is kind of, we've no idea what the new norm is going to be, but we're all going to be there in it, and we have to adapt to it. And I think music is an incredibly powerful means to help people go in the direction that they're not quite sure, but they reach to something that, and when you've got a rock star that's been in your life all your life and you're getting a little older, those people never go away. And I think they help you and support you through so much that you probably become more appreciative in times like this than ever. And it's like I said to you off air, Sharon, it's kind of like almost apologetic that I've never suffered from mental illness in my life, so I can't compare it to anything, because yeah, I mean, like I said, you got a girl that finishes with you, dumps you or something, and you just feel pissed off, and then you go for a walk in the park and time heals. But with something like this that you're constantly fighting again, I mean, just to throw names like Robin Williams and Marilyn Monroe, Alexander McQueen, Kate Spade, and of course Anthony Bourdain, all people that were successful and happily married and with people that care about them and things. And then on the pop side of things with, Kurt Cobain at the time, as big as anybody, but struggled with suicide, depression, mental illness all his life. And when you have the pressure of going out in front of a bunch of people at a moment when you just don't feel like it, how the hell do you get out of that? And then Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, and of course Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. His wife was great. And then the other thing, Sharon, is where the people that are left behind start blaming themselves. I mean, it's like Peter Hook was telling me about Joy Division. It's like, could we have done something? Well, what can you do? I mean, and then you can't spend the rest of your life beating yourself up thinking you might have spared them, because it's that one moment where they might take their life or something, where the next day they might be okay. I mean, you know far more about it than I do, but I look at it from a distance, and it's more than drama. It's like, wow, I just don't know. I suppose music is that release for them, the performance, but that's like what, 2 hours?
Well, no. Well, so Tony I'm going to make him say live on this show right now that he's going to read my book.
Yeah, I'm going to read your book. Of course I am.
Well, geez, about time.
I've been busy with, as John Lennon said. You'd mentioned Lennon. What about Lennon? Plans are what you have when life gets in the way.
Working with all of these famous artists. Who has time?
Listen, I haven't had a chance to read your book. I've been hanging out with...
I like to give him a hard time. This is so... I'm going to stop him before he goes into this whole tirade. I love nothing more than fighting with my brother, Tony. We're like brother and sister just bicker at each other. I mean, it would just be torture for anybody to be around us. But so I won't expose the poor audience to it. We have certainly had, as we say in Ireland, a few good rows. And they've all productive rows. It's all love. It all comes from a good place. But when you mentioned all those artists, I remember when those musicians, Chester, when he died, and then it was another musician, and then it was Kate Spade, and then it was Anthony Bourdain. I was writing for a local magazine, and it
I
was,
remember, yeah.
yeah, and it was at that time that for the first time I ever wrote about my own struggles, and then leaving that, doing the writing for that publication, I moved into, just starting to talk about it more, because I felt like, just as you said in your text message to me, that sometimes when you share with other people that, you suffered through a depression like I did, and suffered from addiction like I did, and are still here, like, how dare I not tell that story if it can mean helping somebody else? And that's how I feel too about doing the show. How dare I not share with my audience, or my community, really, all of these great people that everybody thinks, this stuff just kind of happened to them. It did not come with a lot of struggle and a lot of work and a lot of, rejection and all of that. And I think the relatable part of you talking about Bruce Springsteen's depression, and talking about David Bowie, it really does help somebody. That's why, these programs of 12-step recovery actually work, because it's just people relating to each other. We all need to know now more than ever that through this whole time of tumultual racism, and the protesting, and COVID-19, I mean, how much more can we take as a globe? But we will rise up through it. And the music, I believe, will be that, remember how bad it was, but we got through it.
I think a lot of what's to come with what we were saying before about whatever the new norm is, I think there'll be people in their basements and places writing probably the best stuff they've ever written, because, I mean, let's face it, they can't do anything else. But if you bring out the creative energy that's built up inside, and deliver something that can almost be an anthem that's going to help everybody else, then it's going to be, and that's why people like Springsteen lead the way, if you like, And I do feel that you have to feel that there's something good gonna come out of it, because I mean, you look at, I remember the Chester Bennington situation. I didn't realise until, I mean, yeah, I knew Linkin Park. I didn't have any of the albums and stuff, but a good friend of mine was a big fan, and he was talking about him, and you get to find out from his wife and stuff that it was very public that he'd suffered all his life. But the weirdest thing of all, Sharon, was you can hear it in his lyrics. All his lyrics are a cry for help, and you think, how did anybody not save him? But then again, that's almost like me blaming somebody in the Chester Bennington camp, in the same way that, I'm defending Peter Hook and things. It's inconceivable, but it was,
Well, let me jump in on that, because I think that's a great point. I wrote a chapter called "To the Families," because that is what I have seen to be almost the hardest thing, is how could I have not known? How could I have not seen? What could I have done? And, the thing about depression, and, first of all, mental health issues, mental illness, all, like, it's such an overbearing disease, because you can't see it. It's kind of like COVID-19. But worse, actually, because you can't escape your mind, right? You could get medication, you could hopefully get community to love around you to help you. But depression and wanting to die is not something that most people, when they actually want to die, are going to share with anybody, because that is the great betrayal of what I see as depression, is that you're never going to know, because we don't want you to know how bad it is. And it's never the fault of anybody else, but it's such a long story about that. I won't get into it. But
the other thing, though, Sharon, is that, you take a guy like Chris Cornell, and, after the events and things, like, you invariably get the wife talking after a period of time about living with a person with that and everything. And two people in particular, like Kurt Cobain and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, who both, died from suicide. Prescription drugs made it worse. They they give them stuff that doesn't make them better. It just kind of makes them better for a minute, but the long-term effect is chronic. I mean,
yes, it is chronic. And you'll read in my book how I haven't had even an antidepressant in my body for 24 years. And I bring that up mostly because there are other ways. And it's not to say that medication is bad. It's just medication of any type for too long is something that, you know, we really
Addiction.
look at. It's, yeah, it can become that. So let's get back to the music, Tony.
Sorry, yeah.
I couldn't do it. I had to say Tony. Too, right? I'm not that healthy.
I got it.
Yeah, can you do the American accent?
That was it. I've done it.
So Tony,
I got it.
Tony has done many speaking gigs and corporate gigs. I've been blessed to be able to witness him. I think one time it was at the Vinoy in St. Pete, and another time you were doing some event with men talking about rock and roll, and oh, God knows. But it's
Botox and rock and roll.
Like that, right? It was great. But it's been such a wonderful journey that you've been able to witness. And I love that you're doing this podcast. Tell the audience about the podcast. What's the name of it? How can they find it?
Well, I have a podcast called Way Back Then, and it was very definitive in as much as way back when is kind of nostalgic. And I've always had this kind of thing about myself personally as I get older, where I don't want to be this old bloke they pull out of the closet and let me tell you when it was great in the music business, you know. So I want to be kind of relevant today. So I was digging through, like, you know, the mess that is kind of, you know, stuff around me that I just don't throw away. And I found some really great cassettes, and I found Steve Winwood, and I found Ray Davies from the Kinks, and I found the Cramps and the Ramones. Both of those guys had died from when I interviewed them. And then I wanted to get to industry veterans, you know, guys that, because the music industry now is a much changed beast. It's pretty much run by accountants and lawyers, and it's very corporate and stuff, you know, like in the same way that it screwed the Dixie Chicks' career when they started to make a political statement. But the 60s, you know, the Dylans and the Neil Youngs, they could make songs about, you know, Kent University and Vietnam and everything like that. But the thing was that what I really wanted to do was I wanted to inspire kids, because there's a generation of, and again, I don't mean to sound like the old bloke preaching, but there's a generation of people growing up, Sharon, that have never had it to miss it. And, you know, the artists that are leaving us now will never be replaced. And Bowie is the classic example. But it works on different levels, because what I found out that nobody taught me when I was working with artists on the road, and not for the periods like they were, because they would go from one territory to another. And a major act takes 2 years to tour. So, you know, you see a guy that you're used to seeing a lot, and he's a character, and he's, you know, banter, all that kind of stuff before and after the show and things, and something's not right. And you go over, and that's the time where you can put your arm around them and say, you okay, you know. But you got to realise that reaching out is important, but that guy might be playing that night to 30,000 people, and his wife might be pregnant and just had the kid, and he'd rather be at home watching a movie and having a slice of pizza with his baby and his missus than being in front of an adoring crowd. And those are the things that kind of... There's a great quote from Doc McGee, who managed Motley Crue as well as Kiss. Well, I mean, not the easiest job in the world, you know. And and this is a great quote, and it's not derogatory to the artist, but he says 90% of rock stars have less than a high school education. They wave their hand in one direction, and 30,000 people wave their hand in the same direction, and they feel power. That's the same person that goes back to the hotel and wants a steak sandwich at 4 a.m. and can't get it, and goes berserk and throws the TV out the window because he's so used to being adored. And that's when they turn to things for a release, whether it's prostitute or alcohol or drugs, because there's an emptiness that leaves them. But we've known over the years that happens to comedians. They perform on stage, but they suffer off stage. They need a stage as their vehicle to perform in life. Yeah. And a lot of times when you take that away with them, they don't know what to do. And I think it's really important. They used to have, in the music business of old, they used to have artist liaison officers, people who travelled on the road to check all was okay with the band, which is a caring role that, unless you can monetize it, the industry wouldn't be interested in it now. But those type of things are really important, because you get to know people when you spend time with them, and there are different characters, and you have to know where they're at that moment in time, because, you know, it sounds like dramatic, but you could save a life if you went to somebody at the right time and saw there was something wrong. So a quiet word with the manager, or somebody saying, you know, it was a little weird tonight, was all such and such, you know.
Yeah.
It's over and above the Call of Duty, if you like. It's more than getting them on TV and radio. It's caring about the fact
They
that
are.
they're struggling for whatever reason.
Asking somebody how they're doing is actually a really important thing to do.
Well, it shows you care, because it's not something you can be insincere about. It's like, right, there's a difference between, putting your arm around it and asking them, looking in their eyes and saying, "Are you okay?" Than, "What's up with you?" What's your problem then?
What the hell is wrong with you? Get over it.
But you see what I'm saying? That the fact that they're being worshipped, and then there's an emptiness that creeps in. That they really have to. But I think the thing is that those kind of things should be explained if they're explained at the right time. I mean, that's what I love about another thing about U2. We all know them for, like, the fame and everything that they are. They've always been famous for as long as most people have been alive, but they weren't when I started working with them. But I do know for a fact that both Larry and Bono lost their mothers when they were like 13. And Bono is quoted as saying, "I didn't do this because I wanted to do it. I had to do it." You know what I mean? He had to be in the band. That was the family that and there's that thing where you can feel really angry that, why is it my mother that died? Why me? But they don't do that. They do something productive and positive as a result to make their life better. And that was music.
Well, that's really how I felt, especially, last night I found this really great video of this young Black girl and this young white girl dancing together. And it was like an African hip hop dance. And I cried watching it. I was like, that is so beautiful, because you don't even have to say anything. You can just watch these two young girls, so innocent and so untouched by what life can bring to people. And all of, I can't not talk about what's happening in the world right now, of course, because for me, it's the silence is really a bad idea. MLK much more eloquently than me, but to be silent about it is actually, not the right thing to do, in my opinion. And I believe, and I understand why everybody is protesting. I understand breaking the windows. It's all of this pent up anger of nobody hearing you. So what do you do when nobody can hear you? Did you hear
the streets?
Did you hear Demi Lovato sing "Anyone"?
No, I didn't actually.
I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
It really, and this right before she sang it on the Grammys, right before all of this went down, and it's just her singing like, "Can anyone hear me? Like, are you listening? Like, I've been telling you, I'm depressed. I've been drunk. Can you hear me? I don't feel like anybody's listening to me." And she's like angry in the song, and it came out so beautifully. And of course, she was crying through it when performing it, because that's what happens to people when they don't get heard. And to use that vessel with music. I mean, I get chills talking about the song because it's so powerful. And you've been able to witness some of the greatest artists in life go through their pain and bring the magic on stage, and then sometimes not be so magical off stage, just like how we started this conversation about Whitney Houston.
Yeah. And it kind of will always be there, I mean, even sometimes people nip it in the bud. I mean, a classic example is the Beatles, I mean, when George Harrison kind of was the first to come out and say, "I can't do this anymore," when you go out to perform and inspire and invigorate people, and all you can hear is just a screaming mass of people. And, maybe that might have led to going off stage and just being really low and down, that can go deeper and deeper, because it doesn't matter what wealth and, glorious lifestyle you have behind you, if there's something that is the most important thing to you, which is your health and your mental health and things. And sometimes it just gets to a situation where it ends the way it does, and that's what, again, for fear of repeating myself, but with people like Bowie, when he created the alien rock star in the 70s of Ziggy Stardust, he'd been making records for like 10 years with one hit, Space Oddity, and then this thing exploded, which was kind of, like incredible at the time, but then again he killed it off in his prime. And who does that when they've waited that long to be that successful? But he was a heroin addict. He was like, really, he would have been part of the 27 Club who had died. But he killed that off. He went clean. And we wouldn't be talking about him now if he'd have taken the role that Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Brian Jones, etc., Kurt Cobain, at that kind of period, late 70s, where you've had the success, but you can't really deal with it. I mean,
what was it like working with Bob Marley?
Well, it's funny. I've got a great story about Bob Marley. It's kind of like, the people say, did you ever meet him? I said, well, I kind of met him. I met him at a gig, and Bob Marley loved his football. And they were doing a place...
America, we say soccer.
Soccer, yeah, well, football, football,
yeah,
not like
football, yeah.
Where you throw it across the field. Anyway, we won't go there. But they were in the car park, and they were due to sound check, and he wouldn't sound check until the deciding goal, and he's got his dreadlocks back, and he's a great little footballer. Might have been the cause of his death when he had cancer in the toe, But the thing is, like, I got introduced to him by a guy from mine. Said, "Oh, this is Tony that he's working with us now." And I think it was like 1978. And he's got this big smile on his face. I mean, he would have. He's stoned out of his brains his whole life, But he kind of like, yeah. But he just reached his hand out, this glorious, beautiful smile, and it was like, and my conversation and my relationship with Bob Marley was, "Jah Rastaman, the Almighty One, Jah will provide." So that was my conversation with Bob.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but you can't say, "Yeah, mate," after it, can you?
Well, I'm sure many people did, but you did not.
No, that was it. I didn't. I mean, he died like 3 years later, and that was a really weird time for me because I was working with a band in Leeds in the north of England, and the head of promotion was off on vacation when he died. And I got a phone call at like 10 o'clock at night, and they sent a car to pick me up, and I had to go down to London and organise all the TV and radio obituaries for Bob Marley. And it was one of the 3-4 hours in the car, and I was grieving as a fan. And same with Bowie, when the Tampa Bay Times and Bay News 9, and you wake up to like texts and messages and interviews and stuff, and it's like, hey guys, I know you've got deadlines, can I just have some time?
Yeah, you were very sad. It was very for somebody that knows you to watch you go through that. I could see the sadness.
It's hard, Sharon, because you've got to be like positive and things. But I mean, I wrote a post when Bowie died on my Facebook page, which was just totally from the heart, and I still can read it now. And I was fortunate enough that USA Today published an article I wrote on Bowie around the 2nd anniversary of his death, and I mentioned it in there. It was the weirdest day of my life. I was woken up I get up early anyway, so I turned CNN on, and they're telling this story, and I can't quite believe it. I just burst into tears, and I woke up and I went to put the kettle on, and I'm bumping into things, and I couldn't nothing was like real. But that's what I mean. That's about music moving you. It's a very poignant moment, somebody's death, when you don't think that person, like, how could David Bowie die? He's not an ordinary... ever
die.
Yeah, he's above that,
Right, and he never.
So yeah, I mean,
his music will live on forever. Which is
sorry.
He'll never.
His music will live forever. But
his
I do
music
think that
will never die, and your stories will never die, because they will be on your podcast, and everybody can listen to your stories. But my God, Tony, if we keep telling stories, nobody's going to listen to us. We're older than some of the people that listen these days. They have the attention span of a flea.
Yeah, but I feel like with just for a blatant plug at the moment, I've the first of 4 U2 podcasts starting today. But it's the really early days when Bono was like an angry little Irish kid and stuff. And then I've got the story of Red Rocks from the guy who made it and things. Now, this isn't about me, the podcast. This is about, if it's a musician listening and you find like a band like U2, and I trade like the lessons learned from rock and roll, how mistakes can turn into huge opportunities, And if you hear them about famous people, my experience is you listen to them differently, because it's somebody that was a part of your life for whatever reason. I mean, you might be sitting there as a 50-odd-year-old guy, woman, whatever, and it might be where you met your wife or your husband at a David Bowie gig or something like that. And it picks you up and takes you back there. And people subconsciously smile or laugh. We've done it.
Yes,
And we just sat there and and all of a sudden you've got this inane grin on your face, and it's music that's taken you there.
it is. Now I can't wait to listen to the stories myself. I'm looking forward to hearing about that gobshite back in Ireland when he first figured it out. Tony, thank you for being with me today. I look
It's been a
forward
pleasure. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
again. We will certainly have all the information of how everybody can hear more about Tony Michaelides and all of his wonderful stories. I highly recommend you check out his podcast. I know it will be quite entertaining. If you love music, you're going to love the podcast. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Sharon.